Hello and welcome to the Convergent video series for the week of December 14th. Top three things we're going to cover on the video this week. First, the markets were down last week on stalled stimulus talks. Two, we're going to talk about some unexpectedly bad unemployment data. And finally, we're going to talk about whether we're in seeing inflation or are we seeing deflation right now in the economy. But before we jump into the data, I hope you all had a great weekend. Last week, we did our second episode of the Advance Your Wealth live stream and podcast. So if you didn't see it live, we're going to be releasing it very soon. And the topic was the 5 biggest mistakes that homeowners make. So we covered a lot of areas that you wouldn't think about related to investments and everything that we typically do. But it is areas that are critical to make sure that you're protecting your wealth with everything else going on out there. So I hope you get a chance to check that out. So with that, let's jump into the data for the week. As we mentioned, the market was down with the S&P down about 1% on the week last week and really seemed to be related mostly to the stalled stimulus conversation. So early in the week, the market was up as we got initially some good news on confirming news on the Pfizer vaccine and its effectiveness. But then basically from Wednesday to Friday, we just got hit with headline after headline about how far apart the stimulus talks were. And so we did see overall some weakening in the markets overall. And, we're in a very challenging time with some deadlines coming up because with the CARES Act that came out, during the pandemic, there was some support and moratoriums around people getting evicted for not being able to keep up on their rent. And then that was extended again later in this year. But the deadline is December 31st. So it's putting renters and it's also putting landlords in a very challenging situation to figure out what's going to happen. And so we do need Congress to get it figured out and get something in place so that people just know what to do as we head near the end of the year. So let's talk about some unemployment data. So as I mentioned, it was unexpectedly bad. So we saw new claims for unemployment rise to over 850,000. We also saw new pandemic claims go up over 400,000. So net, we were about 1.3 million in new claims for unemployment last week. And we also saw a rise in continuing claims up to over 5.5 million. We did see a bit of a drop in total claims, but because that's on a 2-week delay, we do anticipate that will start to catch up with some of this other data that we're seeing in the new claims and continuing claims. And really what we're seeing is the impact of some of these additional shutdowns since around Thanksgiving. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on what happens here with unemployment and with the economy overall in the short term. Because really in the long term, we do see some more positive tailwinds to the economy, but this is definitely something that's troubling that we have to keep an eye on. So finally, on to inflation. Are we seeing inflation or are we seeing deflation right now in the economy? And the reality is we're seeing a bit of a divergence. So for those of you who, most of your income has to go to just day-to-day needs, your shopping and groceries and gas, things of that nature, from the top of this chart that you're looking at, we're actually seeing a rise in those costs, a pretty significant rise in those costs. On the flip side, if more of your income goes to experiences, travel, eating out, services, we're actually seeing a pretty big drop in those prices as those industries are having to discount what they're doing in order to get people to continue to come in. And so again, we're seeing this continued kind of K-shaped recovery that those in the kind of the lower income brackets, that more of their income has to go to just day-to-day needs, are struggling more and seeing prices rise, while those with higher incomes, that much smaller amount of their income goes to those things overall, net aren't seeing really any inflation overall, as the rise in goods prices are being met with a drop in service prices. So again, something that we're going to have to keep an eye on here in the near future. So bottom line, for the week, we actually anticipate a lot more positive tailwinds this week, as we do anticipate with the approval of the Pfizer vaccine late Friday by the FDA, as well as continued stimulus talks that seem to be back on. For the week, we do anticipate some positive tailwinds for the market short term. And then, as we mentioned last week, as we get into the first half of next year, with as bad as the economic data was in the first half of last year, we anticipate that because of those comparables, the economic data that's going to be reported this coming year in the first half of 2021 is just going to look really good. So between vaccine positive news, stimulus positive news, and just better comparables, easier comparables going into next year, we do see a lot of tailwinds to the market, at least in the near term. So we have adjusted our models to account for that, although we do still anticipate a lot of volatility along the way. So with that, if you have any individual questions, always please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we hope you have a great week, and we look forward to talking with you soon.